Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Radhika Dutt joining us. Radhika is an entrepreneur and product leader that advises organizations on building products that create fundamental change. She's the author of Radical Product Thinking, the new mindset for innovating smarter. So today's theme is going to be, drumroll please, product management and operational measurement tools like KPIs and OKRs. Welcome to the show, Radhika.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun today in a topic that a lot of people don't think is very fun, but it really is. It's the heartbeat of a lot of businesses. So, Radhika, before we get started, please give our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
My background is that I started off as an engineer, and my first startup was right out of our dorm rooms at MIT. And all that sounds glamorous, but reality is we made a lot of mistakes, which I now call product diseases, because they're just as common today as they were 25 years ago. And I'll give you one example of a product disease, which was hero syndrome. Our vision at the time was revolutionizing wireless. And I still, 25 years later, have no idea what that meant. But it was all about being the hero, being big, scaling, etc. But there are so many other product diseases like these. There's obsessive sales disorder that I have not even just caught, I've also contributed to. There's pivotitis. There's strategic swelling.
Nice.
I think our listeners are going to hear this and go like, yep, been there, done that.
Yep.
The elevator pitch is that Radical Product Thinking, my first book, was about how to build world-changing products while avoiding these product diseases. Because what we were missing, I realized, was a systematic way of translating vision into everyday actions. And whenever there's a break in the chain in translating vision into everyday activities, that's where product diseases creep in. And so that was the first book. And the elevator pitch on the second book is, I think goals and OKRs don't work. I've seen this for so many years. And the second book is about why they don't work and what actually does.
Excellent. Well, really happy that you're here. Those diseases, I'm chuckling because as a chief executive, I saw them all. I can, I contributed to all of them. We might have had slightly different names, but feature creep and all of that. But absolutely, we suffered from all of the above.
But see, that's exactly why it's so important to talk about these product diseases so openly, because we catch them, there's no fault, there's no blame, right? If we can talk about it openly, then we can say, okay, how do we cure them? And that's the part that's most important.
In both of my books, I talk a lot about shiny ball syndrome, and that is real and pervasive disease as well. Radhika, if you had to pick an event in your life that really put rocket boosters behind your career, and I assume that it doesn't happen in the dorm, what would that be?
I'd say it was having my own startup and being CEO of that startup. Because one, I feel like I learned lessons from those, but two, that was the point where I realized that what I really wanted to do was move into the product space. And so in 2014 was when I sold that startup. And from then on, I've been really focused on product management, but really I'll say product leadership and figuring out how do we build great products and helping companies with that.
Yeah. It's interesting. You come from an engineering background. You're an engineer by training. I love to shine a light on all the different paths that engineers can go on post-degree. I talk to a lot of students that are in their engineering program, and they think that they're going to be stuck in engineering for their whole life. And you are another data point in many that I've had just on this show of individuals who have gone on with engineering degrees and done really interesting things. So message for engineering majors, it is stay on the path. It's great. And open your mind to all the different places that you can go. Would you agree?
Oh, I so agree, because I think it gives you the street cred that you understand this hard stuff and you can speak to engineers authentically. But at the same time, there really is this path that you can do anything. In fact, at that first startup that I mentioned, the role I took on right out of school was in sales and business development. So jumping right out of graduation from engineering into sales and biz dev. And I think this sort of variety in your experiences, learning to think like an engineer, but then taking on other roles really shapes you. And I think in being a product leader, a good product leader, it's so important to have that perspective and having this taste of all these different parts of the organization, but also the skill sets of engineering versus sales, etc. It really shapes you and makes you a better product leader.
Yeah. So, Radhika, let's start with product management. For our listeners who might be unsure of what happens down the hall in the functional area of product management, give us a primer on what a product manager does.
The way I like to think about a product manager's role is the product manager is the one who really hones in on what is the problem? What is the problem that we're setting out to solve? They've really understood the users so deeply that they see the problem, understand it, and then they know what is the change I want to engineer. And then finally, when you can answer that question, what is that change I can engineer or that I want to engineer, then you can build your product. And what they're doing then is very systematically translating that vision for change into everyday action. And in the process of doing that, they're able to communicate this clarity of vision of what is the problem? Why do we need to solve it? Because maybe we don't. What is the end state we envision? And how are we going to do that through our product? They have this clarity of strategy where they understand who needs this, like who's coming to this product. How do they engage with the product to be able to solve that problem they have? How do we enable this solution within our product? Like what's the underlying infrastructure and technology, etc. And then finally, how will I bring this to market? And by answering these questions and communicating it, they keep everyone aligned. And that's how they engineer the change.
Yeah, and a product manager is like the ultimate matrix player in an organization. Yes, they have their team, but as you're describing that the need for business acumen and taking the blinders off and really understanding the customer, the engineer, what's happening in technology, finance, et cetera, you're straddling all sorts of areas of the business.
Yeah, so true. You really are.
Yeah. So now that we've got this baseline understanding of product management, if I asked you to pick the most prominent challenge that most product managers face, what would it be and what typically stands in the way of them solving this problem?
I think the biggest thing that happens is you have your ideas, your plan, and it turns out that, all your stakeholders seem to have very different ideas and very different plans. How do you bring about this alignment? And the answer usually lies in prioritization. You have a sense of what are priorities, but there isn't the same alignment with others in terms of, sometimes it's the lack of alignment in terms of what is the problem we're solving? What is this clarity of vision, in terms of whose problem are we solving? What is the problem that we're solving? Why does it need to be solved? But beyond that, like once beyond that level of alignment, even in day to day, what you talked about is shiny object syndrome and what I call pivotitis. Often that happens because stakeholders often feel like, this is what I think is the most important. And then you feel like, oh no, I think this other thing is important. So what is the solution to this? One thing I find is prioritization discussions often get very contentious. It's my opinion versus yours, and we're sort of arguing very subjectively. And what I find really helps bring us all on the same page is this shared vocabulary. So let's talk about this shared vocabulary. The way I think about how we prioritize, just instinctually, is we're always thinking about long-term versus short-term. And the more experience you have, the more you have this intuition for what's the right balance between long-term versus short-term. But the trick is to make this explicit for your team. And the way I do that is by drawing an X and a Y axis. So your Y-axis is this good for your vision or not? So good for the vision or not, good vision fit versus bad vision fit. And the X-axis is this good for survival or not? And survival is usually financial survival, but it could be stakeholder support. If you're a big company, maybe it's stakeholder support that's your survival. And so now that you have these two axes, here are the quadrants that emerge. Things that are good for the vision and good for survival, those are the easy decisions quadrant. But if you're always sticking to easy decisions, it means you're being myopic. Sometimes you have to invest in the vision. So investing in the vision is where it's good for the vision, but in the short term, it's not helpful for survival. So an example of this would be, maybe I'm working on the tech debt. I have to refactor code. Maybe it is that I need to spend some time on user research. I need to go talk to some users, right? Or maybe I need to do some training. All of that is investing in the vision. The opposite of that is what I call vision debt. This is the quadrant where it's helpful for survival. So maybe this is going to win me this many multi-million-dollar deal. But maybe that requires a custom features, which is bad for the long-term vision. So it's vision debt. Yeah. And remember that disease I talked about, obsessive sales disorder, that happens when I take on way too much vision debt. And in talking to stakeholders and aligning them, this shared vocabulary, I find that really useful because I often draw this on the whiteboard, vision versus survival. And maybe we're arguing about this particular feature or the sales opportunity. And I'll put it down in one of these quadrants and I'll say, maybe this is vision debt. Here's why, if we must take this on, fine, let's do it. But let's acknowledge it's vision debt and why. And by introducing these quadrants, by the way, it helps you align because it begs this next question. Are we in alignment on what does survival mean for us, right? Is it financial? And the more important question, are we in alignment on the vision? And to this, in my back pocket, I'd keep a vision statement in the radical product thinking format that answers all of those details, not the bullshit vision of revolutionizing wireless I talked about, but a detailed vision statement, right? And now you can create true alignment and talk about where does this fit? I'd love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'm hearing customer center. I'm hearing vulnerability. I'm hearing active listening. All skills that leaving egos at the door. All things that folks know they should be doing, putting the customer front and center, but our egos all get in the way. And your four quadrants that you've described is a really interesting way. I understand the vision axis, but then when you said the survival axis, that's a really interesting thing to think about and gain alignment around the senior executive table about what that really means.
Yeah. And even the vision, right? Very often we think we're in alignment on the vision. At so many companies, I find that when your vision is broad, everyone repeats the same vision. And so everyone thinks, oh yeah, we're in alignment. But what happens is when you have a vision like revolutionizing wireless or, empowering people to express themselves, Boeing's vision is what? The enduring global industrial champion in aerospace. Yeah. It's like, what does that mean? When you have a broad vision like that, right? Everything sounds like a vision fit. Your vision is no longer a filter. So when you draw this vision versus survival, everything sounds like it's a vision fit. Yeah, sure, let's just do it, right? And I think that's what begs for a very detailed vision. And that's something I talk about in the Radical Product Thinking book. What I talk about is a fill-in-the-blank statement that gets into the details of what is the problem statement? Why must it be solved? How are people solving this problem today? maybe it's pen and paper. It's not even, a competitor or anything like that. And if we can't answer why is the problem so important to solve, maybe the status quo is fine, then we have no reason to build a product, right? So answering the vision at this level of detail, as opposed to, leader in aerospace and, are revolutionizing wireless, that's when you actually have real axes for this X and the Y axis that I talked about.
Yeah, I like to talk to students about Coca-Cola's vision statement. It's basically refresh the world. Well, what? Wow. Okay. Just about anything can fit in there. I totally agree. So, Radhika, what's one thing that you've discovered in all your product management travels that you wished more people knew about? And here you're answering the question, if only every product manager did blank, we'd see more innovation and more product viability.
If only more product managers took this approach that is Jedi-like, and it's a Jedi-like skill of setting intent, experimenting, learning, adapting, and by taking this reflection-based discipline, they would be innovating so much better and producing better business results. And I can get into what I mean by more of that if you'd like.
Instead of wandering around like Darth Vader and just hacking into everything and saying, we're going here, follow me, whatever, don't care what you think.
More like stormtroopers, where there's lots of frantic activity, everyone is shooting everywhere, but they miss everything that actually matters.
There's Star Wars aficionados who are like, what are you guys talking about?
No, but see, I think that visual really hits me, right? That's the one thing everyone knows about stormtroopers is that they never actually hit anything that matters. They might hit all sorts of, it's just chasing targets, but not creating meaningful impact. As a product manager, I think we're often driven in our organizations to be like the stormtrooper, chasing targets. There are all these numbers that we have to chase, but instead we need a reflection-based discipline. We need to be able to know our users, the market well enough that we truly can sense it. And then we experiment, learn, and adapt, right? Experiment meaning we have to understand the problem well enough before we just jump to solutioning. And it's really a puzzle-based mindset. We can talk more about puzzles and why I think it's this important mindset shift from goals to puzzles. But it's thinking about the puzzles you've set and solving this puzzle very systematically, reflecting on how well it's going along the way. And by taking this approach, we innovate much better. It's so much more effective than the stormtrooper approach of let's just fire everywhere and see what hits.
Yeah, ready, aim, shoot, or ready, shoot, aim. All right, Radhika, we're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back and talk. We're going to shift to operational measurement after the break. Want to understand money, markets, and the economy to make better financial decisions? I'm Andy Temte. Join me every Saturday morning for Money Lessons with Andrew Temte on YouTube or your favorite podcast streaming service. And we're back with Radhika Dutt talking about product management and operational measurement. So let's shift gears and talk about OKRs, KPIs, all the numbers. So in business circles today, you hear a lot of folks talking about OKRs as an upgrade to the use of KPIs. First of all, please help our listeners level set on the alphabet soup of measurement. And then, I talking to you before the show, I know that OKRs aren't necessarily the holy grail here, but why might OKRs be preferred to using KPIs?
Okay, so first the alphabet soup. So KPIs, they stand for key performance indicators, but essentially they're the key targets that companies set. And OKRs are a different methodology for goal setting, but it's basically same stuff, different accent. OKRs stand for objectives and key results. So why are OKRs supposedly better? So here's the theory I'll mention. and then I'll talk about the practicality. The theory with OKRs is that it's supposed to give you more detailed direction, that the objectives set what you're trying to achieve, and the key results are the targets to see have you achieved that. And supposedly they're better because Larry Page from Google says this is their secret to success. John Doerr, the famous billionaire, says, this is how people like the Gates Foundation and Google have rocked the world. Bono too, apparently. And here's the Radhika Dutt take on it, which is that goals and OKRs don't work. Whatever you want to call it, SMART goals, OKRs, KPIs, targets, all of the same methodology. Basically, it's the same old idea, just repackaged, relabeled. Why do I first of all say that it's just repackaged, relabeled? OKRs sound like they're a new idea. Larry Page from Google, he evangelized them in 2018. John Doerr wrote that book in 2018. Yeah, sounds all new. But you know what? Actually, those ideas, OKRs were instituted by Andy Grove at Intel in 1978. And then I go back all the way to 1978 and I go like, okay, where did he get OKRs from? The answer is going to be shocking. 1940s from Peter Drucker, Management by Objectives. So Andy Grove took Management by Objectives and tweaked it a little bit. So now let's go to the 1940s. What problem was Peter Drucker solving? Well, he was working with General Motors at the time. The problem statement was they had workers on the assembly line who were unskilled doing repetitive work. And he found, goals are a great way of getting them to deliver certain deliverables, getting everyone aligned on what are the deliverables and pushing them to do it. And research shows that when you have a repetitive task, like if you're doing crunches at the gym, doing weights at the gym, stuffing envelopes for a campaign, goal setting works great. This is exactly what Peter Drucker was doing. That's what he was solving. It was a repetitive task. There is one right way to install tires on an assembly line. No questions, no arguments. This is the goal. Tell me, have you or haven't you achieved this target? Right? Simple.
Yeah.
Now you take the same ideas and you apply them to the manufacturing floor at Boeing, where you have skilled labor. Everything that can be automated has been automated. And when you set production targets, you see the kind of quality issues that you run into, right? Where there are panels flying off of planes. Mm-hmm. The issue with goals and targets and why they don't work is that it creates the incentive that it makes people show you the good numbers and say, ta-da, it worked. What you really want in teams is for people to actually look at the bad numbers and to say, is that a problem? Is that an opportunity? What just happened? Like to dig into it, play detective, and figure things out. And that's the muscle that has atrophied. And this is why, by the way, Andy Grove at Intel, he very famously said, leaders are the last to know. Why is that? Because everyone wants to show the leader exactly what you're hoping to hear. You're the last to know.
Yeah. Well, here's your softball. Give us a teaser for your toolkit, your framework. Before the show, you were talking about something called OOLA. So we're playing T-ball, and I put the ball on the tee, and there you go.
So OOLA is a framework for puzzle setting and puzzle solving. So instead of goal setting, it's puzzle setting and puzzle solving. Why is that so important? Because puzzles create this natural sense of curiosity. It creates, when we as humans like to solve puzzles, it's this internal drive we have where goals feel like it's an external thing that you're forcing me to achieve this. When I look at a puzzle, I want to solve it. And this is what you find, that puzzles are like catnip for the high performers. Mm. And so in puzzle setting and puzzle solving, the OOLA framework, the O stands for objectives. And you set the puzzle, and maybe I'll work through an example. So this is a company I've been working with the last 2 years. They used to use OKRs, but sales had stalled. So we looked at the puzzle, what's going on. But I'll give you the sales example of a puzzle. So instead of an objective and key result, where an objective and key result might be, we want to grow the business. The key result is achieve X million revenues by the end of the year. Instead of that, a puzzle would be sales grew in the last 3 years, but they've stalled in this last year. We want to get to X million revenues by the end of this year, but this is the puzzle I see. What is happening here? And here are the open questions. Is it that the market has shifted? And maybe there's something going on that we haven't figured out. Maybe it's something related to AI, but we haven't figured out how it's hitting our sales. Maybe it's that our message was resonating for early adopters. It's not resonating for the mass market. Or maybe that our product was working for the early adopters, but it's not working for the mass market, right? So these are the open questions. So the objective is the summary of this puzzle, which is how do I get back to that growth trajectory and this target, but by solving this puzzle, which I genuinely don't know the answers to this, right? So now you've set the puzzle. Once you've set the puzzle, now you can solve the puzzle. And solving the puzzle is the HLA out of the OLA, hypotheses, learnings, adaptations. And the hypotheses, learnings, adaptations means 3 simple questions. How well did it work? So that's basically when you try out your hypothesis, your first attempt at the puzzle, and you say, how well did it work? So let's say you tried this new messaging for your sales, in your sales team to see, is this resonating for the mass market? And great, you discover it's working. Ta-da! Fantastic. Turns out it's working well. Second question, what have we learned? In this case, we look at the deeper information, right? Great, messaging is working, we're getting meetings. It turns out in the mass market, in addition to the decision maker, there's this other group that we need to entice. They're not bought in. And traditionally, we've never talked to this other group. What have we learned is we need to now also be talking to this group. The third question, what will we try next? So based on how well it's working and what have we learned, what will we try next? And the answer to this might be, here's this group we've never talked to. Maybe what we'll do is we'll create a white paper that they can easily forward. Or maybe it's a webinar we organize for this other group. And this is how we start talking to this group. And this is how you're going to adapt. So this is the hypotheses, learnings, adaptations. And using this puzzle setting and puzzle solving, we keep figuring out puzzles, unlocking puzzles, solving them, figuring out the next puzzle, and we keep going as an organization. We never get complacent.
Sounds like a toolkit that really drives empowerment, both in the product team and in the areas of the business that sit outside the product team, bringing people into the puzzle-solving process, allowing blinking red lights to blink in your dashboard, and getting after them and really tearing them apart. Am I getting this right?
Exactly. I think what is so important is, we often in the organization talk about empowering teams, right? But one question that hits me is people. Why do they need empowerment? Why aren't they empowered automatically? Why is this an artificial thing, right? The moment you sort of move to this puzzle setting, puzzle solving mindset, you're tapping into people's internal drive to solve these puzzles. And what you're giving them is the scaffolding so that you can course correct when needed as a leader. And so as a leader, what you're doing really is you're tapping into this internal drive, and you're figuring out how much knowledge, skills, and experience does someone have. Because when they answer these questions, how well did it work? What have I learned? What will I do next? That is what gives you this information. And now, based on their answers, how much can I delegate to them versus how much hand-holding do they need, right? And now they're truly empowered, without you artificially having to do so. You see that someone's able to really run with it. Give them bigger puzzles, tell me how I can block obstacles for you, but just go forth and make it happen. Whereas someone else, you might discover, I need to give them more hand-holding.
Yeah, I got to imagine there are certain kinds of leaders that are going to gravitate toward this. And what I mean by that is those who can set their ego aside, those who can exhibit vulnerability, authenticity within their teams, they can stand up and say, I am not the smartest person in the room. Let's solve this puzzle together. Do I have that right?
I love that. It is so true, because in setting that puzzle, right? Remember that part that I mentioned, open questions? This is the piece that I find is the most vulnerable for leaders. There is someone at Adidas who's been using this approach to set the puzzle. And what she was sharing was, she shared the problem statement that, here's the problem that we want to solve. Here are the open questions. And she was sharing some of the open questions, just like I said in sales, things that we don't know the answers to. And she got really interesting pushback. The team said to her, wait a minute, shouldn't we know the answers to these questions already? Shouldn't you as the leader know the answer to this? And she was sharing how much vulnerability there was as a leader to not come at it from a position of knowing. Because when you set OKRs as a leader, what you're really saying to the team is, I already know, here's what we want to achieve, and here's what if you just do this, we'll achieve this. Whereas this comes at it from a position of not knowing and say, these are questions we have to figure out together. We really don't know this, right? And she had to say this to the team. We're going to figure this out together. But these are the questions that I'm realizing right now that we don't know, but we need to figure out. But that sort of is both vulnerable, but it brings the team with you on the journey. And it's in doing that, you're creating the psychological safety for your team to give you both the good and the bad. We talked about leaders are the last to know. You're creating that space for your team to tell you what they're learning, and you can course correct.
Yeah, great way to develop your people in the flow of work. Sounds very interesting. Let's go on to our mentorship moment here. Radhika, you have a mid-career product manager sitting right in front of you right now, and they want to ensure that their skills remain viable in their field. What should they be doing right now to set themselves up for future success in product management?
Oh, I love this question, and it's so relevant, especially in the age of AI. AI is going to be fantastic at optimizing numbers. If as a product person, your focus has been optimizing numbers, all this A/B testing, et cetera, has been the skill set you've been focusing on. How do I improve this user engagement number? If you've been optimizing numbers, AI is going to be able to do that. Your differentiation over AI is your ability to have this Jedi mindset of this reflection-based discipline, to know your market so well, to be able to really sense it, and then take this puzzle setting and puzzle solving approach. Your ability to experiment, reflect, to learn and adapt. This is where you can create much better change than AI can. This is your true value add over AI. Don't abdicate that to AI.
Fantastic. Well, let's end the show with our lightning round. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, question number 1. You just won a $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or a cause. Who do you pick?
That's a very easy one for me. It would be EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation. Why do I say that? It's a nonprofit. Their work that they're doing is about defending civil liberties in the digital world. The way they describe their mission is to ensure that technology supports freedom, justice, and innovation for all people of the world. And this sounds like a grand mission, but I've seen kind of how they've supported researchers in security, and it's been truly inspirational for me to see.
Excellent. Next question. I give you access to a little bitty time machine, and you can send a short message to an earlier version of yourself. What's the message, and what previous version of yourself do you send it to?
Oh, I think it would be a message that is for me in my Lobby 7 days, which is the first startup out of my dorm room at MIT. And the brief message would be, trust your gut. If it feels like, people in management or the other co-founders around you are saying things that don't make sense, don't be afraid to question it. You have a natural sense for what is the right thing to do. And it's okay to question what doesn't sound right.
Excellent. Well, Radhika, we're all works in progress. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
What I'm working on right now is really unpacking my upbringing and how that has shaped me. And that really helped to embrace or rather, that helps me embrace all of myself. Just to give you one little tidbit, I'm from India, but then I lived in South Africa right after apartheid laws were abolished.
Mm.
So from when I was 12 until I was 17, I lived in South Africa where they had just abolished apartheid laws. I was the first non-white in my class, the second in the whole school. Some momentous experiences, right? And I think those are really experiences that shape you. So that plus my upbringing in India, all of these culture changes, moving to the US when I was 17 for undergrad, all of these are things that I'm only unpacking now in my 40s.
That's excellent. My advice to all leaders is know thyself before you start to try to figure out the people on your team. Because if you don't know what makes you tick, there's no way that you're going to be able to serve your team well. So that's excellent work. Radhika, it's been wonderful to get to know you today. Thank you so much for this educational journey into product management.
Thank you so much for having me here. I just loved our conversation.
Excellent. Well, my name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues, and maybe a family member if you really like them. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte. We'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.